How do you feel about following instructions? Tossing the instructions aside and trying to build it on our own is a very normal human experience. Well, if you didn't know, I have kids, and with kids comes a lot of instructions. Unfortunately, it's not an instructions on how to raise a child or be an awesome parent. They're instructions on building things like cribs and strollers or jumpers, the swing. I learned very quickly that I needed to follow the instructions that came with these products, that I wasn't capable of building them without those instructions. Instructions are there for a reason. They're meant to help us build things the correct way. How many times have you come across something that would make your life better, but you didn't follow through with trying it? We have all kinds of podcasts and stuff that help us, and we seek out these ways to live better lives. We listen to TED Talks. It's like we're collecting tools, but never building anything with them. Does having that information help us if we don't put it into action? Like I said a moment ago, we seek advice, tutorials, and guidance because deep down we want to build something meaningful for our lives. I think we're actually trying to ask a bigger question here. How do we build a good life? Well, in this series, we're experimenting with living nobly, what it means to be people of integrity in our lives every day. The formula that we've been following is pretty simple. It's integrity equals authenticity plus good character. What if living with integrity can help us build a great life? Well, the good news is that Jesus answers all of these questions in one of his most famous sermons, the Sermon on the Mount. The sermon is 2 whole chapters in the book of Matthew and contains teachings that were probably just as mind-blowing to the people that were listening as they're going to be for us. Here's a couple examples. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. You are the salt of the earth. If your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it. Do not worry about your life and love your enemies. At the end of his message, he addresses the question we started with. How do we build a good life? And it says, therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who builds his house on a rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the wind blew and beat against the house, yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. First, if we're looking for how to build a good life, we need to start with Jesus' words. He said that hearing his words and putting them into practice is like building a house on the rock. Notice the key here is putting his words into practice. His words don't transform us if we don't put them into practice. He describes this as a foolish man who builds his house on sand. So if we hear his teachings and put them into practice, it's like building our lives on a solid rock. When we practice the words of Jesus, we exhibit good character. So that means that integrity follows what Jesus says is best. When it comes to what Jesus said is most important, we can look at another conversation that Matthew wrote down, and it says this. Jesus replied, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and prophets hang on these 2 commandments. What that means is that everything God says is best, all the instructions, ideas, and commandments God has for humans are summed up in loving God, loving others, and loving ourselves. This would mean that living with love as our priority would truly be a noble experiment. But how can we experiment with building our lives on what Jesus said? First, start simple. Live your life in a way that shows others love. A love that makes them curious about what's different about you. I keep treating you like a doormat, but you keep loving me and treating me with kindness and respect and mercy and compassion. Love them until they're curious. And they ask, what's different about you? Why are you so nice to me? Well, because somebody loved me first. And that somebody is Jesus. Second, check what you're building on. Is it sand? Is it foolishness? Or is it firm foundation of faith? And third, do what you know is right. Living out what Jesus teaches isn't about being perfect. It's about making consistent choices based on what Jesus says matters most. The good news is that God is with you and can guide you as you practice what Jesus says is best. When you face big life decisions or big obstacles, you will have a foundation of faith that is firm and stable. You will have built habits of living with integrity so that you can stay true to what's best. Remember that integrity follows what Jesus says is best. And I want you to close your eyes and imagine with me, what would it look like if you built a life on what Jesus says is best? Keep them closed and imagine what would happen if we were all known for our integrity and loving those around us. I hope you guys have an incredible week. Go out there and love until somebody's curious. Take care.